find a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself? What are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So we kind of at a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
Right.
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward and our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
WESN.
Welcome to Talking Point Show. Michael Small here. First of all, I just want to say that whole situation with the WASA CEO and the claims made, which is an ongoing subcategory of the war of words between the two political parties. Right now, so far what has been presented is more political than factual, in my opinion. And I'm waiting to see if more substantive information is brought to the forefront. Because right now it's basically a he said, she said. I don't have enough to go on to say who is telling the complete truth. In the case of Marvin Gonzalez, he could speak for himself, but unfortunately who he can't speak for is the rest of cabinet, which is where a lot of the big question marks comes from whenever you're speaking about anything with regards to decision-making of the past administration. The line minister, as I've said before, on behalf of Dr. Naya Gaspidoli and Fitzgerald Hines and others, it's not totally up. In my opinion, I do not believe it was totally up to the individual ministers on certain things. Now, with that said, the way how the current Minister of Public Utilities is addressing the issue seems far more bacchanalist than actual someone with a pertinent point to make on a technical level of any degree of sophistication and accuracy. And I have yet to see, we've gotten claims, this was bad, and this was bad, and this is what would have happened because it was bad, but we haven't necessarily gotten enough details to connect the dots in order to say, oh, we have a very well-detailed presentation that shows why it's bad. And without enough context and enough supporting evidence and information, not even going so far as to say documentation, I'm not necessarily looking to jump on the bandwagon. While I don't want to weigh in on the bacchanal back and forth, all I will say is, with regards to the Minister of Public Utilities, those who have a short fuse with him, I could understand why. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it because you're just stooping down to a level that neither side should, but it seems that they're more than willing to do. So it is what it is. With that said, a couple other things I want to get through before we go on to today's daily review and get to the top two stories for me, because that was the CEO thing is not it. I don't think the situation is healthy. I just don't have any confidence either side is really dealing with the situation properly, right? For different reasons. But one of the things I do find interesting is that DCP Martin, it's reported she's still on duty while a probe into her actions over the Brent Thomas affair is ongoing. Now, what's interesting is that the Commissioner of Police said that suspension of any police officer was squarely within the remit of the Police Service Commission. From what I understand, and this has come up more than once, given the whole situation from the meritless debacle, I did not speak to the president. I spoke to Blissy Prasad while at president's house. Yes, nice. Thank you for those, semantics. But anyway, I won't go to who went into those semantics, those who don't know. Because of all of that, as far as I'm aware, and I could be wrong, the Police Service Commission only has the capacity to discipline the commissioner and deputy commissioners. So on a practical level, the Commissioner of Police is correct. But the stated reason, I believe he is technically wrong. If it was someone under the DCP level, disciplining them would be up to him. Now, this could be perhaps, listen, as a acting superintendent who's an intelligence officer off doing real police work and not there in the office politics, I can understand and forgive him if he doesn't understand that. It points out the fact, though, regardless of whether you care if his statements were technically correct or not, it does point out to the very real fact that, hey, how come Martin's still doing the job? And to some degree, I am left to wonder, did the Service Commission maybe act too hastily after Erla was arrested? I mean, by the same person who arrested Brent Thomas, right? Let's not forget. And now they might have a little bit of regret and they don't want to necessarily make the same mistake twice, and DCP Martin isn't arrested. So because of that, they're like, well, maybe we shouldn't suspend. I don't know if that's their mindset, because that's a very interesting quirk of human behavior. Oh my gosh, we got burned, right, over that, so let's not do it again. But the question is, and I'm not saying that it is so, did they actually look into the individual merits of this situation? And then you have to bring in the political perception dimension into it, because who appointed them? Under whose potential authority DCP Martin went to Barbados? Who appointed DCP Martin? Who promoted her after the Brent Thomas affair, where even the judge, the local judge in the matter, did not mince matters over the situation. When the government of Barbados did not even bother to contest Mr. Thomas's claims over the situation. She was promoted after. So right now, and I to some extent, I actually feel a little bit sorry for the Police Service Commission, because it might not be fair, But I don't think they have a very good way to insulate themselves from being perceived as part of the political bacchanal, which is more or less potentially the problem in this situation. That politics got in the way of the actual criminal justice system, or circumvented it, or interfered with it. Now, to what degree, we don't know. To be fair to DCP Martin, she might not be guilty of anything. And I'm saying that as a broad generalization. That's what the investigation is for. We have to have confidence in the process. And yes, there are times when the process fails us, the guilty does not get convicted. I'm not saying that's what it is here, I'm just saying that in general, to point out to the fact that even if that happens, we have to put our faith in the process, because the process is there for a reason, in order to enact our criminal justice system responsibly, because we are hopefully still a democratic free society with individual rights and freedoms for all of our citizens, and even those who are not here legally, at least to some extent. And those sorts of things are not to be taken for granted, lest you find yourself in a situation that you don't like. And that is also a very human situation to end up in. A couple other things to get to. First of all, there's been talk again about plastic pollution and how much plastic pollution the Caribbean and Latin America makes. And one of the things that I find interesting in all of that debate, because apparently there's an article and it claims that the plastic pollution per capita of the Caribbean is somewhat high. They don't necessarily give a proper comparison of statistics. Here's the rub though. To what extent is it plastic that we actually locally produce, and plastic packaging in particular, and plastic soft drink bottles, which is one of my bugbears? If you want to deal with local manufactured pollution, that's one of the low-hanging fruits. I miss glass. That said, the liter bottles, those were glorious. Anyway, that said, I don't think in the debate when you talk about, oh, the plastic pollution the Caribbean is generating, what about all of the packaging of all of the imports? We don't make that, but we have to get rid of it somehow, right? And at the end of the day, if the world is a global village, you can't just take one region in isolation and say, hey, all of the stuff they produce. Because to some extent, at least for the Caribbean, we buy a lot more stuff than we sell to the rest of the world when it comes to retail products. So we don't control all of the excess plastic packaging. You know, you buy a scissors, but you need a scissors to open the plastic packaging to get the scissors that you just bought. So then, you know, which comes first, the scissors or the packaging? I don't know. How does that work when it's your first scissors? And that's just one example. So one of the other things I wanted to point out, the Minister of criticisms have been targeted at the former Minister of Youth Development and National Service. And I won't necessarily go into the details of what he said, she said, right? I will just say this. And this might be not necessarily totally fair. But these sorts of programs, one would hope, would have a positive impact on the fabric of our society. And one of the things that you would hope that that positive impact will then impact further down the line would be youth participation in illegal activity. And it might be, in this case, because I don't like results-based analysis, and this is possibly one of the examples as to why, but we have a very real practical issue. We weren't really seeing the dividends of our young people not engaging in crime. So it could be that the programs were good, but the programs were targeting or reaching out or getting to the wrong people. Because at some point, does it really matter if you're preaching to the choir? If you're having programs to help develop young people who are already well-adjusted and to some extent developed in a good direction, you're just, yeah, you're throwing good money after good, but the actual gains might be minuscule. That's like having special makeup classes for your advanced students. Like, do they really need it? Yes, it might help them improve by 1%. But it's the failing students that need the makeup classes, not the advanced students. It's the demographics of the geographical locations, etc., that are going towards crime. What schools might be compromised? What communities might be compromised by local or even well, when I say regional, I don't mean Caribbean region, but regional criminal influence. And at the end of the day, again, it might be unfair, but we've reached a point now where we have very real problems of younger and younger generations of young people engaging in criminal activity. So to what extent did the focus of our youth programs really not make enough of an impact? And I think that's a good point to start any sort of criticism. Because again, I do wonder to what extent this is all very political. On one hand, yes, the current administration does have a right to point out the failings of the previous government because they have to justify why they want to change things. And that is technically not an unreasonable justification. But to what extent is it going too far into the political bubble and I just need to hit you while you're down, whether it's fair or unfair? The flip side is the previous administration has all rights to defend themselves, but to what extent is that, well, we're trying to hide and obfuscate all the inefficiencies, deficiencies, lack of proficiency, and generally, whether intentional or not, because that's a whole other separate debate, poor performance that led us to certain results that results in governance that led to the election results. I don't know. I don't know to what extent they're trying to spin and to what extent it's reasonable defense. The truth is somewhere in the middle, but then now it's to get to the truth, right? Somewhere in the middle could be a lot wider than you think. It doesn't have to be right smack dab in the middle. It just has to be in between the two extremes. Doesn't necessarily get people off of the hook. Okay. No time for the daily review today, so we will take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome the good lady. There's a lot to get through with her today, and we don't want to take away any of her time because quite a few things happen that's right up her alley, speaks to her direct personal experience. I can't wait. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WSN Show. Michael Small will be right back after this.
Something very important, there is an intrinsic neurotrophic factor that is released through myokines, that is some peptides that we have in our muscle that produce neuromodulation and increase that peptide in the brain to increase the neurocognitive of the brain.
I'm glad you said that, right. So exercise has an important part to play in the aging brain. As we get older, our gray matter does shrink, we have reduction of synapses, but exercise is shown to actually improve our cognitive functioning.
Totally.
Feeling drained? Struggling to keep up? It's time to take control of your wellness. On this episode of Wellness Unlocked, we're diving into the key nutrients your body needs for all-day energy and balance, with 100% or more of your daily essential vitamins, plus added chromium to support healthy blood sugar. This is complete wellness in a single soft gel. Join us as we uncover how small changes can make a big impact on your health. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and take the first step toward better health.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. I mean, and Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we cannot have a stalemate.
You'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
As always, we appreciate you starting your day with us. Let's get into this morning's first conversation.
Is the country's healthcare system more at risk more than ever?
Why it has remained unaddressed for so long?
Political parties get lots of cash, big cash from financiers, and then when they get that now, you can't account for it.
But it's really the specialist nurses who we are in a greater shortfall for.
We can tap into the resources and have them, at least form some mentorship programs.
Highlight our food systems, and which will attract persons from all over the world to come and experience something that actually supports the local economy.
We're lucky that we have a vibrant legal system that allows change to take place, and it's not that matters are just swept under the carpet and discrimination is allowed to be perpetrated.
A lot of people don't know that, there were attempts to ban the carnival, suppress the carnival. And we're back here on Talk About the WSN, the Color Capital Show. Michael Swall, joined by
let's go with all the accolades. Former Minister of Finance, former challenger for the political leadership of the PNM, and that's why, you know, there's pertinence to some of these things. So we can't get into necessarily everything that we hope to today, but there's still more than enough to chew on. And of course, to do the chewing is joining me is Karen Eshishera. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning, Sean. Yes, there's so much going on really that, again...
Well, for you in particular.
No, but I don't mean on my personal level.
No, but the topics that
there's
you...
so many,
yes.
so many that you have to now decide which ones you're going to address. And I think one we have to address, obviously, is the issue of the revenue position in Trinidad. Now, I do want to look at the TTRE, but time would not allow us, at least for me, to do what I consider a significant deep dive, which I think is important, and not just do something very superficial. So that's events keep overtaking us. That's how I will put it. So how do I start with? I'm dealing with the energy sector, and the reason, of course, is that we know that energy is the backbone of our economy, and we know that the issue of facing this new government is where they're going to get the money from. And they, of course, the opposition, the current administration says, tell us where it asking us where we're going to get the money from, tell us what you did with the money. So that's a good question to ask. But let's go straight to the point of the energy sector, which is the major backbone of our economy. And I want to go to the parliamentary debate with Minister of Energy, very important to our economy, speaking about the current, well, it's supposedly seeing a downturn and a reduction in the aggression between the two parties, that is Iran and Israel. But nevertheless, in his mid-year review debate, he made some certain points which I think bear mentioning. One of them, he said, is that we should have had the refinery up. And if the refinery up, we would have been in a very good place because oil prices had gone through the roof. But that's not true. It's the opposite. We are not anymore. Our exploration and development is about 57,000 barrels a day. That's nothing compared to what you need for a refinery that has the capacity to refine over 140-something barrels. And as I had said previously on another occasion, Texaco had been importing crude. We have been importing crude for the refinery because we are old in terms of over 100 years. So we are mature oil fields in particular. Not that to say there isn't more, but the refinery does better when oil prices are depressed, especially if you are importing most of your oil for refining purposes, because your margin of profit is greater. If you're paying less for the crude oil and you're refining it and then selling it as different kinds of fuel, obviously your margin of profit is going to be higher. So in an ironic twist of fate, the fact that the prices, and up to yesterday anyhow, so I'll speak about that, up to yesterday they were about hovering around 74, 75, and there was even predictions that it would gone way above that because of the geopolitics playing out in Israel and Iran, and the United States being part of that whole issue. They felt that prices were going to go up, so that it doesn't benefit us really when prices are high. Two, it doesn't benefit because the refinery pays more for the crude oil. Secondly, we don't produce enough crude oil in this country. And thirdly, the fuel subsidy is going to be greater. The more the price of fuel costs, is the greater the government subsidy is going to be. So that I wanted to see. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the minister talked about the cross-border gas fields. Manatee, Lauren Manatee, and Coquina, what's the other part of it? Mannequin. Yes. They are cross-border fields. Dragonfield is not a cross-border field. But it's one of the more important fields because, one, it has the most amount of trillions, 3.7 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and also because it's very near to us, about 17 kilometers, and it goes to the hibiscus platform, and then they take it down.
Almost right next there. Right. When you look at a map, it doesn't look that compared to these other situations and these other countries that are considering Dragon is so close to the hibiscus platform.
Exactly, and then NGC takes it down to the LNG and downstream. So it's not a cross-border. Lauren Manatee, it was a cross-border. Most of the natural gas was in the Lauren, which is the Venezuelan side, and ours was the 2.7 trillion. They had 7.2 trillion. The point was because they had tried up to 2 or 3 years ago to develop it jointly because of the position America took. Even before President Trump said that he was revoking all the OFAC licenses, even before that, they delinked the Lauren from the Manatee because of the situation between Venezuela and Trinidad, which I don't need to rehearse again today anyhow. So the thing was with cocaine and mannequin, they have probably, and that's why Shell could have made a final investment decision with regard to Lauren Manatee, because they linked the both gas fields, keeping our the Manatee in our waters so they could develop it because it's not subject to that OFAC license sanction. And similarly, they can do the same thing with cocaine mannequin. They cannot do that with Dragon Field. So it's all in Venezuelan waters. So unless they are able to do what the other government tried very hard to do, and you can't discount that. They tried very hard to get that gas, natural gas, which we need because our production is down. And we are very much subject to volatility in prices, as we're going to talk about just now. It's clear that it's not a smooth sailing. There's still that tension, putting it mildly, between Venezuela and the United States. And as long as that exists, it's very difficult to see that America, even though it's affecting the Caribbean, and we are of strategic importance to them because of our location near to both Venezuela and Guyana, nevertheless, I don't know what will come of that. So I just wanted to make those preliminary points, which brings us to now the volatility of prices. You know, you're seeing it. I mean, it's played out just today. I looked at the price of gas and natural gas and oil today. And there's an article, let me see. In fact, it went down significantly. It said it went down below pre-Iran and Israel, I don't know what you want to call it, the conflict between both of them. And so they actually say oil prices have fallen so much, it's now cheaper than it was before the Iran-Israel conflict. And why is the reason for that? Because of the ceasefire. And I just want to just put my own little spin on it, and I'm not getting into anybody's politics. I'm just speaking about it from the position that how it affects our revenue take, which of course we know we are in some dire straits in our, as the current government has disclosed in the mid-year review. So we know what we are oil and gas, and clearly when oil prices go up, and more importantly, natural gas, because we are a natural gas economy, obviously we benefit from that. We saw it in 2022. So what has happened? I think everybody, all the countries involved, want to come out and save face and project themselves as winners. And I'll just say briefly what I think on that. I believe that Iran deliberately, he told the United States they were going to do it. They told Qatar they were going to do it. And they only struck the military base, the largest military base the United States has in the Middle East. And they were forewarned, and no casualties and no destruction. So I think that was, from my perspective at this point in time, it seems as though Iran was saying, well, we told you, but all these Middle Eastern countries that surround us are very close. Iraq is very much like us, a Shia Muslim country. So we can strike a military base in the Middle East, and that will affect President Trump, who promised not to put boots on the ground again or get involved in the Middle East. So I think from the Iranian point of view, it was a message sent. Yes, we told you, but next time we may not tell you. And if we don't tell you, it's going to be a position that Donald Trump, as Prime Minister, may not want to find himself in. Why? Because additionally, Iran has another option, closing off the Strait of Hormuz, which provides 20% of the global supply of oil. Now, we know America does have oil, a lot of oil with inventory, but it's going to have an impact on at the gas station. Prices of gas are going to go up. Fuel is going to go up because there's a correlation between natural gas and oil. Prices are going to go up. Inflation is going to hit America. And a lot of the manufacturing that he has brought back to America, or is in the process of bringing back, use energy, fossil fuel as a major source of electricity. So even the goods that are produced, manufactured in America, they will be affected by this, if the Strait of Hormuz was closed, and it is mostly controlled by Iran. And so for two reasons, I think President Trump wisely does not want to go back against, even his MAGA supporters are not in support his most fervent MAGA supporters do not want him to go back into any another war. They don't. They have battle fatigue. They don't want that. They don't want that, and they made it clear to him. And the economy is going to be impacted if Iran does one of its options. So that deals with the United States. And for Israel, Israel needs America. Without America, we know that they would not be able to sustain their position in the Middle East as they have. It's not a secret, it's a reality. So for all those reasons, we saw today that oil prices went down to the pre-64, 65, when just the day before it was about 74, 75. And natural gas is down to $3.53 when it was $3.89, and everyone is predicting it would have gone beyond $4. So that's the volatility. Because of the ceasefire, President Trump did not mince his words, telling both of them to stop. He said, listen, y'all are fighting so much, you don't know what, and I'm not going to say it.
Don't say what he said.
No, I'm not, I don't even use it in my own personal life. Why would I say it on television? He said, but it was funny though. He did say, look, both of them have been fighting so long, they don't even know what they're fighting about. Well, in his colorful language, not really presidential, but he got the point across. So right now, but everyone says it's a fragile peace, and that is true. So that takes care of that. Now, you know, I did have to pivot back, so to speak, back to Minister of Energy, because the minister did say that the Manatee field, Shell is going to try to produce more natural gas from that field. And that has a lot to do with the fact, but he didn't, that is, I think, that was Shell. But he didn't mention the BPTT Ginger field, which is one of the 10 global gas fields of BPTT, because as I said on another occasion, or maybe more than once, that the oil companies, Shell, BPTT, and all the big companies that produce fossil fuels, mainly natural gas, have pivoted back to fossil fuel because that's where the money still is. Taken $5 billion out of developing the green energy and put $10 billion more back into fossil fuels. So that is consistent with Shell's commitment to Trinidad and Tobago, and also the government's decision to give a longer timeline for closing the deep water competitive bid round, which was supposed to have closed, I think, at the end of this month or something like that, but he's extended it to September. And all of that has a lot to do with the fact that fossil fuels are back, and we are benefiting from that pivot. So I hope that, as the government had said, the minister will go forward with the transfer pricing, because this is an opportunity for us to get more revenue, which is what we currently need in this country more than anything else because of the huge projected fiscal deficit. So I think I dealt with the energy and how it would impact our revenue. So the thing I wanted to, yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out one thing though. The Minister of Finance mentioned a $5 per MMBTU price. Now,
when did he say that?
He said that at the mid-year budget review.
Yeah, but that was how many, a week ago?
Well, technically speaking, depending on where you look, the price never hit $5, although from what I understand, because of, I can't remember who said it. It could have been Dr. Mohammed yesterday or somebody else. How we get our prices, we may have gotten a $5 price, right, depending on the specific deals that we got. But I think, as you know, one of the things that I found interesting was he said, the net result coming from him was that he expected revenues to be down, even though it was at, he said, $5 per MMBTU, because oil prices were at 66. Now, the energy minister, he apparently expected revenue to potentially increase, but it seems as though the hopes of that more or less, I hate to put it this way, but it's been dashed by peace. Our energy sector has unfortunately benefited from the conflicts that causes these spikes. And I guess the ethical side of me is happy for it, but any hopes that we will see any kind of bump from other people's conflict, I think we should temper down on that, not just from an ethical point of view, but also from a practical level. It seems as though Iran and Israel could flare up again tomorrow, but there are some reasons and forces kind of clamping it down right now.
Right, but one of the newspapers did have a heading saying a fragile peace, and it is fragile.
Yeah.
So I think at this point in time, we look at what's happening in a week's time. I mean, saying it was going to be $5 wasn't so over the top to give that projection, given what was happening in the Middle East. And we do benefit when there's conflict, and it's that's a reality.
To be fair, he did say he did not expect revenue to jump up even with that increase.
Well, I don't see how he could. Well, to be fair to him,
which I found interesting for him to make that statement, right?
It doesn't. Who said that?
The Minister of Finance. where he said that the prices were, he did say oil was $66 at the time,
it's gone
but
back.
they say that the gas prices were so high and he had no expectation of, I found that weird. So,
well, maybe,
he is technically correct with regards to the final result, at least so far.
Okay, I think maybe because the budget price, remember it's a mid-year review, so they've come in mid-year, less than mid-year, into governance. So the projected budget price for the natural gas under the former government was $3.59. So anytime, I mean, it hasn't gone to $4. It nearly came to $4, but it has stayed within the $3.80. So I don't know how much,
one indicator has it at $4 at brief intervals.
Yeah, at brief intervals. So it has not really.
In March and in May.
Right. So my point about that is that perhaps what he's saying is that even if the price went up to $5, which I don't know what will happen. We don't know what will happen. Every day, put on your television and something new happening, seriously. But maybe one of the reasons he may have said that is because it's not really a mid-year review. They have to present the new budget by September the 30th. This is June. They have 3.5 months. That's most of the fiscal year gone, right? So how much revenue, even if the revenue goes up, how much can you expect? And even if it goes up to $5, which at this point in time, today, I don't expect that. From $3.59 to $5 is not that much of a bump up. So I think it's the time frame involved, and also even with that increase, it may not have the impact that he would have liked to have. So
do you expect, because I think he went so far to say he expects revenue to drop. Energy sector or earnings from the energy sector to drop?
Well,
generally speaking right now, do you think?
Because of production, because one of the issues that have all the major
natural gas?
No. I was talking about like the chambers of commerce and
right.
so on. have said it repeatedly year after year when the former minister would give the budget projections. He has always, in their views, overstated the production of natural gas in particular, because we really don't produce much oil. So we really are a natural gas economy. And he's always overstated the production, or most of the times in any event. So the deficit becomes greater. So I don't know what is going to be the outcome. I don't think 3.5 months is less than 3.5 months, maybe 3 months now. So we'll have to wait and see how it turns out for us. But I do think by 2027, definitely things will turn around for us. Because not just because we are having more gas fields, or one of the major BP gas fields, Ginger, is in our waters, but it's because of the decision that the big players in the energy sector have made a decision to go back to where the money is, and that's fossil fuels. And that's good news for us, regardless of the war or ceasefire. I mean, obviously that unfortunately benefits us, as it always has, in one way, but the fuel subsidy goes up in another way. So we'll wait and see what comes out of that. But having said that, I wanted to make another point, and I think I had raised it on a program, but it seemed that there was disagreement on that point, and that was when the former minister, Colin Imbert, expressed concern or indignation that this current government had projected that it would have a revenue of $60 billion and an expenditure, I think, of $9 billion because of the other deficits that have occurred that they have.
A deficit of $9 billion.
Yeah, a deficit of $9 billion. What I would want to see that in his first budget statement, which it was given very soon after they won elections in that year, 2016, in fairness to the government, he did project a revenue of $60 billion, and 60-point-something billion, and he did project a fiscal deficit of $63 billion. And in fact, after that, I did go and check to see how many fiscal deficits they incurred whilst the former government was in office. And they incurred significant fiscal deficits in the last few years, or some in $1.8 billion, certainly the billion-dollar range, and some in $2 billion. So, I mean, don't come out and say you're so shocked at $60 billion when you did the same thing in your first budget.
Well, also the $9 billion deficit, generally speaking, that practically happened last year, if I believe. So I don't really understand. Why is it so shocking now?
I don't understand it either.
I'm just saying, especially since technically this is a deficit born in part by a $5 billion budgeted deficit from the budget that was presented last year for this year, or sorry, at the start of this year. So, I don't know. I find the washing your hands of a situation that you created, at least at the beginning. You weren't there for the mid-year budget review, obviously. I just find that, you know, to what extent is most of the population willing to believe you? And by most, I mean everybody but the 7,000 that voted. More on that later.
Well, I was going to go to that.
That was what it's coming. That's a great segue. So switch to the topics, folks. Switch to the topics, because I started the conversation yesterday with Dr. Mohammed and, you know, doing the numbers, because he sent me the results, I think, even before the articles came out in the papers.
He always seems to have oh God, I should not use that word. And why do I use that word?
It's you. I like the word. It's you that don't like the word.
I wonder why.
We wait for that Commissioner report. But regardless, the running numbers, I can't help but be somewhat shocked, both by the amount of votes and the party's response to the low voter turnout, which I am sure you're more than happy to explain. That's even lower than the last election that you participated in, when you came out and said, so we can't say that all Karen is being revisionist. No, back then she pointed to the fact that she saw it as a problem that the voter turnout was low even then.
Yes, and I just want to say, I want a strong opposition, and hopefully one day the PNM will find itself again and return to where its original roots. And I hope they do find their way out of it. But this internal election does not bode well, but it's early days. I know that. A day in politics is a lifetime. So anybody singing the swan song on any government or any party is being a bit too premature. As the whole, if you use an example, what went on in the Middle East, you know, you just, from day to day, things were changing. So with internal elections to Trinidad, yes, I was a former member of the PNM, and one of the reasons I did leave was because what I saw in that internal elections. That had a major impact on my decision. So I'll start first with the voting. When the PNM was in opposition, so they would not have had control of the government purse, in a way that they had in the last few years. So when they were in opposition, I think Penny Beckles had gone up against Keith Rowley for the position of opposition leader. And over 19,000 people voted. Over 18,000 voted for him, that's Dr. Rowley, and Penny Beckers got about a little over 1,000 votes. That's 19,000 people who voted. When I challenged for the internal elections for the political leader, it was, let me get, about 9,000, half of what came out, what had come out when, yes, it was about 9,000. And they were again in opposition. A little over 8,000 voted for Dr. Rowley. I got up 345 votes or something like that, and then the other two got about 100 and something. Anyway, so I can safely say it's half of what voted in 2022. And now this time, when they are now again in opposition, and there is a declared opposition leader because it was unopposed, only about 7,000 people came out and voted. What does that say? What does that say? And another thing, so that does not say that there is much appetite within the party and a lot of confidence in the party. That's what it says, because you have to have confidence. Yes, they're going to pull themselves together. Yes, the PNM went through a glitch, but they're going to recover. Every signal says otherwise, really. And I mean, it's really sad to see that. But you know what? I'm not surprised. I'm going to give you two examples. I have to say, Mr. Roberts, Anthony Roberts, was the epitome of being a gentleman. And he did respond. When we started getting complaints from persons working in CPEP and URPS, those were the people that were sending complaints, and the government was in office in 2022. So they had the public purse, right? And look how many people voted. About 8,000 people, 9,000 people voted, right? And a lot of them were CPEP workers and URP workers, and they started complaining that they were made to put the number that was on the voters list and put that number on their ballot paper before they put it in. So you could, so if you said
just so you know, from a different source, I have heard a similar complaint I think the details might be different, but
No,
or rather they didn't know.
It.
Right, but what I'm saying, whoever your sources are on confirmation is, I have another source.
But can you get a better confirmation?
Well, right, yes.
Than the Election Supervisory Committee, we wrote to them on the, November the 30th to the election in the Elections Supervisory Committee.
This is of the PNM.
Of the PNM in 2022, and asked one of the questions they were asked: was it true that we had understood that before persons put their ballot in the ballot box, that the number in which they voted, the sequential number in which they voted, that number had to be written on the ballot before you put it in the box? And the answer, he answered me on the 2nd of December, Anthony Roberts, I believe, and he said he confirmed that it was true. So I don't need any better source than that.
Right.
I don't have to hear say, he say, she say. They admitted that they did that. You know what that was about? So when you said you were going to vote for, and I'm not talking about me getting it because the difference was so huge. I mean, please. So I'm not talking about that at all. But I'm talking about the issue with the lack of confidence in this internal election. And I'm just speaking to my own experience. When that happened, I just could not believe it. I could not believe that they would go sink so low. You know, everything else, oh, but they're not sure. They might say this, you can't prove it. But they admitted to something like that. And what that meant is that if you were a CPEP worker, which they busted, and they said that they were voting for Dr. Rowley, let's say they were voting, but they really weren't going to vote for him, because voting was supposed to be confidential and secret. When they came and they said you're voting number 20 on the thing, and your name is there, you have to put number 20 on your paper before you put it in the box. So when they open the boxes and they start to count the votes, they can see that number 20, John Brown, did not vote for Dr. Rowley, but he voted for X. And that way they were intimidated. How could you do something like that? I mean, I find it really, really anything they say now, I believe people when they say it, from my own experience. And the other thing too, I mean, Robinson Regis, she really has the audacity and the temerity and all the words I can think of to come out and speak about stop the fighting. Stop the fighting. This is not the PNM. Oh gosh, you shouldn't be the last person to say that. You know that? You should be the last person to say that. Quite apart from anything else, just on my own experience, you launch, apart from the individuals who launch personal attacks and so on, which I ignored, but you yourself got involved as the woman vice chair, I think, saying all kinds of personal negative comments, which I will not repeat. And then I think the Women's League published something. I am a PNM. I'm going on a PNM ticket, and you're attacking me publicly. What is that? And then they had a recording. I have it. I started asking Sean to pick it up, but I saw it myself. When she was on Mr. Manning's slate, when Dr. Rowley challenged Mr. Manning for the leader of opposition, what she did not say is what she forgot to say. She said he was unfit to lead the party. His character was unfit. I don't know if she called him a raging bull or Rottweiler or whatever. She gave him a Rottweiler, I think, too, eh? Right? She wanted to paint herself as Miss Kumbaya, saying back in then, you know, we didn't do things like that. Even though I was not supporting Dr. Rowley, I went to their house and I gave them a dog. Yes, but you were just as bad or worse. What you did not say, I thought I could have picked it up quickly. But I'm telling you, she did not leave out anything. She left out nothing.
With regards to personal attacks?
Personal attacks against Dr. Rowley.
At the time when she said, oh, I did nothing of the sort, we were all civil.
Oh, that is it. So you know what you'll suffer from now? Credibility. Mm-hmm. You know what you suffer from? A lack of trust or confidence. If you know somebody could have dug up that tape and forward it to many people, you should not have said anything. Do like the rest of them and say nothing. But don't come out and say, stop the fighting. It's so wrong. That's not what the PNM stands for. And you are one of the major offenders.
It was one of the things that we noted in the previous administration, that somehow the PNM's Women's League, their standard operating procedure was
attack.
Very little pro-women communication, and very often were used as the arm to attack women who did not support the administration.
Yes.
Which basically, even if a woman had a criticism for any government minister because of whatever might be viewed as misogynistic approaches, right?
Big word, boy.
Right. So let's just say, because there have been a few. You know, Dr. Rowley had a couple moments that were well publicized, and Stuart Young had a moment that was well publicized, although I can't remember if the Women's League spoke up in defense of the hot mic that was more recent. But my point is there were times when it seemed as though the PNM's Women's League, who Camille Robinson-Regis was the head of, right? I don't think that ever changed. It seemed like they were more used as a way to politically attack other women.
Other women.
Because it's women attacking women, so it's not bad.
No, but you see, and the thing is not only that, but you cannot come out and paint yourself unsolicited as a paragon of virtue and someone who the PNM of today should emulate when the exact opposite is true of you. If you had said back in the day, I did something that I now regret that I did, like how Kamala Prasad did, and said I did this and I've learned from my mistake and I regret it because it did not reflect well on me or on the party or as me as a woman. If you had said that, then we got different. But you didn't say that. Maybe you thought nobody would have dig up the tape. Nobody would have come back and attack you for what you said, and you deserve it. And remember, you are not speaking as an individual. You are speaking as a member of a party who is really in crisis. And for you to come out and say something like that, clearly you have no regret about what you said because you haven't apologized for it. Maybe you have amnesia. But clearly, you are in no position to tell anybody anything. You are not in a position, and that is one of the reasons I left the PNM, because you are there. I'm dealing with issues. It's not only, but you see, why it was even worse. The Prime Minister and, what's his name? Stuart Young, said things, and it was directed mainly at me, and it was not nasty little things. But I didn't even hear it myself, because I don't listen to nonsense like that. And I never responded to it, because I know they want you to respond, so you get in an argument, and you bring yourself right down in the trenches with them, and you know better than they are. But when you use an official organ of the party to publish something against a member of the party who just happens to be female, but I wouldn't even that's bad enough. We are our own real enemies when you see things like that. But quite apart from that, when you use an official organ of the PNM to go after a PNM member who was a Minister of Finance in your government and attack me even as Minister of Finance with the CLICO issue, you brought that up and told me to drink water, and I know where that comes from. It just, who are you to tell anybody anything? Who are you? That's why you all are in the place you are now. That's why.
I also find that there are other people within the PNM right now who really and truly need to craft their messaging better, like Stuart Young, saying he maintained the silence during the course of the PNM's internal elections. My silence should not be interpreted as weakness, right? And then I have always prioritized service to the country and to the PNM country. There's no instance where I have engaged in self-serving behavior, especially of the financial benefit type. And the headline being, I don't want to go through all of it, saying the party needs stability, not self-interest. First of all, I don't understand how, you lost an election so horribly. I'm sorry, your position, technically speaking, should be one of weakness. That's point number one. Point number two, at what point was it in the best interest of the country and the party for you not to contest the seat of political leader before the elections in order? Because all of a sudden now, they want to point out that Penelope Beckles has a mandate. Don't mind the fact that it was uncontested. And we do need to ask the question if it was uncontested because people just didn't want to bother with a sinking ship.
Well, you know what?
That's a bit harsh,
you know what? No, you know what I think? No, I'm not saying it's true, huh?
Yes.
But I do think that part of the reason, because Stuart Young was Prime Minister, Stuart Young was the anointed and, they say selected, because all of them, but you know what? All of them who are now speaking out couldn't talk before.
Of course.
No, they couldn't talk before. They couldn't take a principal position. So that's another problem you all have. See, you all have a real problem because you can't go from black to white or white to black. You weren't even in grade. Let me just say that. So when he was supposedly the chosen one among the MPs, they wanted him. That's the person we want us to lead. Everybody smiling for the camera. Yes, you all did that. You all smiling in the camera and so on. You know why I think he didn't go up? Because the going up as political leader would have confirmed, because Dr. Rowley would no longer be in a position directly to affect the internal elections in the way that he did before. And that would be what?
Well, even when he was there, apparently, it's hard not to, to be cynical and say, even when Dr. Rowley was political leader, he seemingly did not have the confidence that he could affect the internal elections.
But remember I said to you already, even though he did not have it, as he has said in 2011 when he introduced the one man, one vote, he said that anyone who goes against the political leader has a hard road to climb. And why he could say, even though he was not popular, just as how he was not popular as prime minister, the fact of the matter was, as political leader, when it came to finally deciding who would run in constituencies, so that even if you fell out with him, and the thing has happened to him, it happened to him, you could not be removed as a member of parliament. And he understood that if they had their foot in that door, right, and that foot in that door, it would give them the opportunity. I am speaking from now from a different hat, right? So I know that even though they understood that, before they understood that that's why he held on to the post, I believe.
Yes.
He held on to the post because he wanted to control who was going to be an MP and who wasn't. And if you wanted to be an MP, for whatever your reasons were, it might be you told yourself, let me get in and I could do something better, or you like the status, whatever the reasons that you justified yourself for not speaking out against him. A major concern was, as a political leader, he determined whether you went back into the parliament or you didn't. When you are not in parliament, he also determines, well, it'd be opposition, so only 6 senators. If he won, he has 60 and he wasn't going to choose you all if he didn't choose you as MP, right? Or he chose you where he could control you. Whatever the situation would have been, I'm saying to you, that is why the position of political leader, he held on to it, because everybody understood what it meant. So all of them sat down there and took what they had to take, because they knew that if, like Amy Brown, I mean, there was always talk about Amy Brown being made the MP for his seat, right?
Yes.
Right, and then Amy Brown was not, he wasn't being,
Which I have heard anecdotally, so it might not speak for the entire constituency, but anecdotally, what I've heard is they wanted Amy Brown. They didn't want Hunter Beans.
Right, but guess who is the political leader still? There you go. That then only confirms what I'm saying.
And
30 party groups, and not one gave him a nod to go up before the...
But to me, this goes back to when people in the PNM say it's about the benefit of the country and not about self-interest.
Oh my God. God, sorry, I'm sorry.
Apologize for technical difficulties. But as I was saying, when Stuart Young says things like, for the good of the country, or it's not about self-interest, I find that given both his communication and communication by the people, the MPs currently and other speakers, some of the senators who lost their seats, right? I don't see.
What do you mean lost their seats?
Some of the former MPs who are now senators who lost the election, right? When you listen to them, it's hard not to be cynical and say, this is not how one would go about if what they're really about is for the benefit of the country. It seems more, as much as Stuart Young, the Honorable Stuart Young, MP of my constituency, let me just put it that way, as much as he says, the party needs stability, not self-interest, everything that I see, almost everything, except maybe from the opposition leader herself, but you could maybe spin that if you want to be extra cynical, right? But I'll say that. Almost all of the other public speakers, it seems as though that it's all about saving self-interest. It's all about it, because it doesn't make sense that they think, in the face of one of the worst defeats the party has ever seen, I guess 33 is the worst, this might be the second worst, we are going to speak as though we're speaking from a position of strength and having the moral high ground and superiority over the government that just beat us by about 100,000 votes. Yeah. And the government that beat us by 100,000 votes did not contest about 5 or 6 of the seats and still got that much more votes than we did, right? Yeah. I just have a hard time
they need to get their act together,
that.
And I want them to, because there are some good people in that, or potentially, and they have to be careful too with that, because name calling on either side, people have suffering from battle fatigue, they just don't want to hear that anymore. Yes, you have to say what went wrong, why you are in this situation, and back it up with the data and so on, so you don't get into the name calling. But I think by and large, the name calling and focusing on that is not what the people of Trinidadians and Tobagonians want at this stage. And I think now, this is my opinion, and Marvin Gonzalez, I think he has a lot of potential. He's fairly young, And you don't throw stones at an empty mango tree, so they're pelting stones behind him. So that's a left-handed compliment to Marvin Gonzalez. But I think he should be, take the moral high road, not to the extent that you don't, you don't have an opinion and you don't show strength. Yes, we want to hear you, but don't go down the road of the Duncy talk. I mean, I have to say this. This is the last thing I'll say on that. I was trying to look for the response of Minister Alexander. I won't say everything he said is something that I applaud, but a lot of what he said, I admire him, and he came with a really good comeback with that. Saying that everybody has their weaknesses, that, everybody has to, we all tend to have to get accustomed to our new role, and he knows that he believes that his current has been now having put in that position. That is a good lesson for the young people and young children who are looking on. When they are hard on themselves and feel that they can't do something, don't give up and don't leave faith in yourself. Because if my coming back and saying what I have had to say is any kind of indication or any kind of encouragement to you, I hope it is. I think he did, in that regard, I was wondering how he would have come back from that Duncy comment. And it was really not really, it wasn't a nice thing, because I think all of us saw it. And nobody, not in...
Also,
nobody, all of us saw it.
The previous administration, there's so many low-hanging fruit responses, because I found, I just did a quick glance again. One of the things that the Homeland Security Minister said is, what I think is Duncy is knowing that it's going to rain and not clearing the water courses. And it's like, when you have those you're vulnerable to such straightforward counterattacks. You need...
That was a good counterattack.
But I wanted to ask you this, on that topic, right? So, and I spoke to this to some extent with Dr. Marvin. Now, he believes, look, the PNM survived 33-3. He doesn't expect them to sink to the point where, they might be in real trouble with regards to, their future and potentially become a declining party. But I, however, am wondering, maybe the current crop of politicians in charge are taking the PNM for granted, are taking the structure for granted, because a lot of their political messaging over the last couple of years was the history and the structure and the this and the that. But we didn't actually see them practice it. Yeah. Right? So they take it for granted, and perhaps, again, it might take a long time, but the PNM of yesterday might not be the PNM of tomorrow. The PNM of tomorrow might be the party perpetually in opposition, watching everybody else. I'm not saying that that's going to be the case, but it seems as though from the diehard supporters, of which we wonder, is it 200,000 or 7,000? We don't know, right? Down to the politicians who don't seemingly understand the position that they're in, and they're responding in a manner that is not consistent with the reality. I could see where they are potentially, if they're not careful, they will weaken themselves, and if they continue doubling down, they will continue to weaken themselves, and then we'll get what we get. Because the current government does not have the weaknesses of the partnership as far as I see so far. So to hope that the current government will fail and then we'll just come back, in the next election and win. When first government says we're going to win the next election, I'm like, there's no practical reason for you to say that right now. Why say it?
Well, you have to say that. But you've got to say that. You have to show confidence.
No? What confidence do you have now?
Not arrogance, but confidence.
But to me, it is arrogance. Sorry.
Well, okay, but I don't see it that way. The persons who want to continue to support the PNM, who has lost its way under a leadership of Rowley, I think they would like to see a return of the PNM, because the PNM is a great party. It has weathered a lot of storms. It's a one day in politics, I say, is a lifetime. I mean, when the PNM was beaten at 33-3, whoever thought that 3 people could ever bring back that party? And it came back. So I don't think we have to be mindful that it's only 7 or 8 weeks. It's 5 years of a government. There's a lot that can happen between then. And the thing is that I think part of the problem with the party right now is in a chaos, in a sense. It is really divided. Division happened through how it was managed by the former Prime Minister. I think he takes a lot of responsibility for that. And what we're left with is a divided opposition, and divided in very personal ways, apart from, I don't know if it's policy, but definitely in a very personal way. I think they're going to have to rally. There are enough voices are telling them that. And I don't share your view. I think the PNM can come back. I think they had a hard lesson, and right now you're seeing the chaos of a party defeated when they never expected it. And you're seeing the infighting being made public in a way that the PNM never did before. But I haven't given up hope on them. There are some good people inside there. Even Stuart Young is a good person in terms of his ability to, to work? No, not just only to work, to articulate, because a lot of people form their opinion, on government based on what they say in Parliament. And, he has to work on things, as all of them have to. But if you want to be back, if you want to be in it, you have to win it. So I think everybody's going to have to take a little humble pie, but I'm not giving up on them. It's not that. I wish they would stop the name calling. If the government wants a name call, let them name call. You don't name call. You stick to facts, and those facts will destroy their arguments. That's what you do. And the obfuscation and the half-truths from the opposition is not helpful. For instance, I saw that Minister Padarat said they spent 1.3 million in the 30 by 30 foot room of the Minister of Finance. I don't think that is correct. So the minister came back and said it was the whole floor. I mean, why say things like that? Mm-hmm. And then the Casaubon paintings, the people of Trinidad and Tobago own that. I mean, it's not. He didn't pick it off the wall and go home with it. My goodness, Casaubon is one of the greatest artists of giving us a historical perspective. Why would you not embrace that? I can't understand that kind of pettiness, and not being honest with it, both do it. But don't do it. Why do you do it when you will be outed? You know what that does to you? That makes you look as a person when you're speaking through two sides of your mouth. I don't know if to believe you. Try to make what you say truthful, and if you make a mistake, come back and say, listen, however, and you have to do that, because both sides, I mean, whether you have, for instance, I thought that Minister Padarat made a good argument and gave a lot of things based on what he said. I don't know what the truth is, right? But based on how he developed it, I mean, I have to give him, kudos for that. But when he said that the 1.3 was spent on a 30 by 30 foot room, it wasn't adding up. And I think the former minister probably is speaking the truth when it was 160,000 that was spent on his office. But whoever got that minister's office, guess what? They're enjoying the coffee and the tea. Mm-hmm. It's not his. He didn't pick up the coffee thing and take it home, He didn't take up the tea thing and take it home, It's right there in the office. These paintings still on the wall, I don't understand that.
Okay, so we have Sanford on the line. I do have a follow-up comment, but I'll refrain. We have Sanford on the waiting. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Good morning, Karen. Yes, now, let me firstly say that when Karen talked about Penelope, when she spoke about Camille Robinson Regis, Karen, I think you need to let me say this to you about that comment about what you spoke about Camille. You write books. Camille write any book? So just forget Camille. You write books. Camille write no book. So don't even give them any don't even waste your time commenting on that.
Okay.
Now, with respect to the to Dr. Munilal, I am glad to see the about turn recognizing that we are a little pond, we are a little fish in the big pond, and his talk about Venezuela and working to probably revive whatever deal is a good sign. So forget the politics. This is about running Trinidad and Tobago. Now, it was me, Sean, that commented on the pricing, so I called to really clarify the pricing for you all.
Right. Yes.
What previously we used to use Henry Hub for natural gas pricing, and NGC was the one for our international pricing. NGC would do the sales and stuff. And Mr. Imbert, when he came in a little while after, recognized that there were issues with the people in NGC, not really. People just come in and doing the day-to-day and not looking to seek a better price for natural gas for the country. So he formed a department to do the sales in the Ministry of Energy. And what they use, three price markers from the Platts Oil Gram platform, the S&P Platts. One, they use the Japan Korea marker. They use 1/3 of that price. They use another 1/3 of the Netherlands title transfer facility, and then the other 1/3 they use the Brent pricing. So it's not when we see the natural gas pricing that they put out on
from the ministry,
the US pricing there, that is not the price that we use. A combination of those three, which are three high prices. So if you want to understand what our natural gas prices are, at any time you have to look at those three markers on the Platts platform. It's not easily available because Platts, you have to pay for it.
Right.
For instance, I subscribe to Platts, and it's a subscribed site you have to pay for to get access to the information.
Okay.
But that is how our natural gas is priced.
All right.
Have a good day.
Thank you, caller. No, he was just explaining because in his experience, the how we get our natural gas prices, it's sourced from three other areas. Brent crude is one of them, and he was just saying, he was just saying it might not be easy for everybody to go to the source material because he pays for a subscription to get him the information. But he was just because he was the one when I mentioned earlier that someone spoke about the price of gas that we have, which is high. He was the one that brings that up. And he brought it up yesterday. Now, he did direct a comment for you, and that is with regards to Camille Robinson. His comment was, you have written books. What books has she written? Don't waste your time with that.
God, please.
Don't waste your time with it. Right? That was his comment for you. So
thank you. I think.
So I appreciate the knowledge. So callers, what Mr. Sahana was basically saying is, don't just look at the news to get the price of crude oil, the price of natural gas that we use, because the former minister, he kind of put things in place to try to get a better price, and we tend to apparently get a higher price from others. Now, one of the things that I did want to say is, because Karen mentioned earlier that they have to learn a hard lesson, or they got a hard lesson with the election results. My thing is, I think they're resistant to some extent to learn any hard lesson and to eat any humble pie. But I will say that part of the reason why I think that is true is not just because they're arrogant or they're defiant, but because to some extent I wonder if they're listening to the wrong people. And in this case, there are enough diehard supporters who are so diehard that part of the defiance and the resistance is coming not from the politicians themselves, but from the supporters who are the most vocal, who are the most loyal, but to the point where now it's not necessarily the most constructive of things, because they themselves are like, well, no, we're the PNM and whatever, but it's like, because from what I understand, again, anecdotally, what you hear from some of the people in the northwest region of the country is very similar to what you hear from the politicians. So which came first? Was it that the politicians, they've taken the lead from them, or what I suspect is happening is the politicians are taking the lead from the supporters, and it could have been happening even before the election, which is why they thought they were doing the right thing to win the election, and it's proof that they were... Well, I assume the PNM thought they were at least trying to win the election, right? So they thought what they were doing would have potentially won the election, and in hindsight, we could see that what they were doing almost had zero chance of winning that election, given how bad the results were, right?
Yeah, but I don't think, in all fairness too, though, I think up to the, towards the end, only towards the end that you could say, well, who was really in the lead? Because everyone was calling it very too close to call. So you could understand why they felt that they had a good chance of still being in office. But I think it's early days, maybe, as I said, it's only 2 months, they have 5 years, and there are a lot of lessons to be learned. I think a lot of why there are so many convulsions in the PNM right now is a consequence of what happened to the lead up. I mean, I am sure that a lot of the ministers who are no longer MPs, and some of them who are no longer senators because of their opposition. I'm sure they wanted to speak out, but from everything I heard, you didn't dare speak out. And, you know, that's why, as I said repeatedly, the political leader position was critical even after he resigned as prime minister. You know, so I think that right now there's so much, you know, there's so much betrayal, anger, hurt, division, and people, you see even with these slates, you could kind of tell who was behind some of these slates. And then even those who are on some of those slates, you know, you have to watch out too, because they have ambition, and it's nothing wrong with having ambition. But then you see that there is a level of betrayal, I find, that has come. I mean, I'm sure in politics, that's why they call it, you know, politics has a bad name, and it does deserve it in a large extent, because there's a lot of ego and all the things that go with it. But I think we've really seen we've seen it at one of its worst. And we've seen it at one of and then there are two new MPs who don't have any political experience. And there are only a few of them who have Robinson Regis and Colin Imbert, and to some extent Amy Brown, have the experience of gone through 20, 30 years of upheavals in the PNM. And I'm sure they had times when they felt that they were not going to come back. But you don't know what the government is going to do.
But I do find that I find it interesting that the PNM has at times some of the things that they're doing now in opposition in Parliament are similar to what I did not like the UNC did when they were in opposition in Parliament. Just with the commentary, the speaking out of turn, the types of arguments being made, the relevance of them, it seems more for appearance's sake to banter than to actually debate something, right?
But they're in a difficult position, you know.
I understand, but again,
very difficult
the point is, why are they in a difficult position? They put themselves there. No, but so, like you said, you acknowledge the fact that they have to take a harsh lesson, but they're not reflecting that in the actions. But to be fair, the government at times, those who are experienced UNC parliamentarians seemingly slip back to the same personas that they had in opposition as well, which is in a way maybe in some cases a step down even from the past PNM administration in Parliament. So I'm kind of disappointed that it seems like both sides are at times more concerned about winning the schoolyard argument than actually debating what's in front of them to do the people's business when it's in Parliament.
So I'll give you examples where, I mean, okay, we're saying all the weaknesses of the current PNM now, and hopefully they will evolve as they have to if they want to stay relevant and make it into the next cycle. But on the UNC side, remember, a critical thing of why the UNC won is because people believed in what the Prime Minister said. I was one of them. I did believe her. The mea culpa, she said right out of about saying that she made mistakes. It came across very genuine and authentic. And I do believe that she has a really good intent. And that's why a lot of people are rallying for her. But that same rallying, she's going to be held a standard of making, when the UNC wins, everybody wins. You have to see that acted out. And you have a public in Trinidad and Tobago who have far more, well, you have the social media, which influencers, but you also have a much more educated public. And so it's not in the days of, back in the days when, and they had limited opportunities to really get different perspectives. So why am I saying that? There are three things that do concern me. If you want revenue, and revenue is a big issue, because you want to close up that fiscal deficit. And it's acknowledged that there's a leakage of 10 billion in the tax evasion. Why would you not use that? That's one of the lowest hanging fruits that immediately allow you to deal with the revenue situation. Because if all those diversification strategies start to come on stream and take effect, it may take a year or two, you have an immediate opportunity to close the revenue gap by implementing the TTRA, which I would speak about next week, hopefully. I keep putting it off, right? But that's because it's going to take it, right. So I'm going to do it next week for sure, regardless of what happens, unless something, you never know.
Don't say that, Karen.
Okay,
you can't say we're doing it for sure, unless something happens again.
Right, okay, so,
no, we're doing it for sure.
That is, how could you, and without even in 7 weeks you do something like that, and you haven't put things in place? Anyway, so that's a concern, and who are the beneficiaries of that? Okay, so that's one. And then that stand your ground, look, you read in the papers that says Range Rover, a lot of Range Rovers involved in things these days. But yes, remember the one in San Fernando, the guy was killed because he changed seats with the person who they think they were targeted, and he died? Come on, people. And then, I can't tell you because I don't want anybody to sue me, but let me just say that standing ground is very rife with controversy in this country called Trinidad and Tobago. And coming out right out the, what you saying now? Right out the gate with those two, the standing ground, and then the board appointments. Come on, a picture speaks 1,000 words. And I saw it and I said, I wonder if I am being overly sensitive. WASA, TSTT, and what's the other public utilities one? WASA, TSTT. Yes, it's TNTech. I mean, you have to be a blind man not to see that. Now, if the PNM did that, you say that's why they are in opposition today, But you can't come and tell me, and then NGC, and you cannot come and tell me a picture speaks 1,000 words. Those are really critical in state board appointments. And Minister Padra standing in the middle of them, seeming very, and he's very happy with what the appointments that he made. So there's no question that they made errors. I heard the NGC, they're rethinking that. But what I am saying, when Anisette had to come out and talk to her not only about the labor thing, but the diversity issue, that is a serious, serious thing, because the former UNC, in its first incarnation, right, that was a big problem for them. When you saw the board appointments, that was a big issue. You're talking the talk, but you're not walking the walk. So you see those three things I pointed out? The same thing you're saying about the PM. That is why I am getting myself in trouble. Because I'm not taking sides. I am speaking what I see, and this is what I see. The PNM has to regroup, and they're going to take time. But they did it before. I can't see they won't do it again. And they don't have Dr. Rowley there. And that's a main contributor. And on the PNM side, on the UNC side, those three things are worrying to me. The board appointments, the stand your ground legislation, and TTRE, all coming straight out the gate.
I will say that somebody stand your ground. They said it wasn't the only model, but as far as I'm aware, it was the only model that they actually specifically mentioned, being Miami, right? And Miami includes stand your ground provisions. It's not just about defending your house. It is, in the middle of the street, you can stand your ground.
I think they're not going to do that,
right? I hope not, because that would be one of the most controversial things
I don't think they'll
do
that. I don't think they'll do that. I think they will stick to your home and your business place. But that doesn't make it any different, because when you have a contract killings, where do you think they come and find you? Well, some of them they might find you on the streets, it's true, or in your car, that is true. But a lot of times it's in your home or your business place. So anyhow, so all I'm saying, I do support, I would like the UNC to do well, this government to do well, because it's good for the country. I want them to do well. I think the Prime Minister is genuine and has very good intentions for the country. I do believe it as of today's date, but I do believe that the same way you have got all this confidence and goodwill, you have to be careful that that goodwill is not eroded, given that you went on a ticket of inclusion which people bought into, believed in, and therefore they are looking to see if it's going to be a reality. And if you do not follow through with that, you are going to give the opposition an opportunity to attack you on that, and so you don't need that.
I think I didn't necessarily. I thought Mr. Anisette was more speaking about the lack of labor representation in the boards.
Come on, his Labor Day, that's why he had to talk about it. He put in the diversity point, though.
The diversity point.
He put it in, though.
So it is, to what extent?
It is.
Because the reason why I say that, it's disappointing to hear that, because when you look at the cabinet, and one of the things I think that makes this government look a lot better than the former partnership administration is the cabinet and the makeup of cabinet, because not only is it racially diverse, It is technically the political origins of the members are diverse. You have former PNM members in there.
Absolutely, 100%.
You have a wide range of experience. You have new cabinet ministers partnered with experienced cabinet ministers. Like, there's a lot of good things with that. So when if you have other areas now where there's no diversity, like, it's extra disappointing now when you see, well, you went through the exercise here. You had all of these
keep it going.
Right. These non-conventional approaches, which really, it also adds, the selection of cabinet gives, in retrospect, even more validity when she says, you know, I'm not going to make the mistakes I made last time. Look, I've done things a lot differently this time.
Absolutely.
Right? But then now with the state boards things, if they're not careful, it might look as though, yeah, but in this case, we're going to revert back to the norm. We're going to revert back to what's usually done.
Let me just say, this is just my point on that. He used the opportunity of Labor Day to raise the issue of labor representation on the boards.
Yes.
But he didn't have to raise the issue of diversity, did he?
Yes.
So the fact that he slipped that in, and he obviously does not want to antagonize the Prime Minister, he wants to work with her. So he has to be careful what he puts the emphasis on, but he said diversity. So all I'm saying to the government is you've got to be mindful of that, because a lot of the genuine support you did get from the population is they believed in the Prime Minister and believed that this was actually someone said to me, and they surprised me, they said, you know, we are now in a different level of governance because we have reached a watershed moment. You know, all this tribal politics, yes, even though people try to play it down, it's played such a big part, but this is a moment in our history when the history books are going to be written. When was the watershed movement? When you saw a movement away from voting on tribal or ethnic reasons, because you're going to have that still, you know, they don't get rid of it tomorrow morning. But when could you say was the watershed movement, that moment that you felt that there was genuine needing? And the Prime Minister can go down in the history books when they are written, and not only as the second time she has been Prime Minister and a female, but the person who really broke that shattered that glass ceiling and made it a reality that we were now free to vote on principle and on policies in a way that we had not before. It's going to take time. I didn't say it's going to happen tomorrow. I know you will come in to say that to me.
I will agree with you that it's a start. I will agree with you that it's a start.
That's all I say.
But my fear is that because no one's expecting her to be Prime Minister for 2 to 3 terms, right? So the question is, her predecessor will be very important with regards to
or successor?
Her successor, sorry. Her successor will be very important because someone will have to maintain that momentum. Otherwise, we could very easily lose any ground we think we've gained in this last election. Well, look, listen, I am a trained Megonian, and I've just lived through some of the most, here's the thing, I'll close with this.
Okay.
One of the things that frustrates me is all of the negative aspects of our politics. You see, it's one thing to say, oh, well, this happened because so-and-so was greedy, or this happened. But to some extent, while we could just say they're corrupt and they're greedy, some of what they do, politicians in general, both sides, it doesn't even follow a logic when you think about it. Because even the most, how to put it, there are a lot of academics, not all of them give great takes, but even the most basic takes at times points out obvious flaws in some of the logics of some of these politicians. And I don't understand. There are at least 2 sides competing, and you would think one of them will figure out, hey, why don't we try to at least be better than the other side? And more often than not, they're not. And that's what's frustrating me. And I'm hoping that this new administration will do just what the person said, elevate the situation. But I have seen not everybody in cabinet wants to elevate alongside the Prime Minister, and the opposition seems to be like kicking and screaming. We don't want to elevate. We want to just play with the little children. We don't want to grow up and be big boys, right? So I do have long-term concerns that even if the Prime Minister is doing a lot of good for the country now, she's not going to be there forever. So what's going to happen after that? And can she even keep this thing together? Because everything, right, I think she can for a term, but everything is great when you're winning. But as we see with the PNM, once a little crack starts to form,
I don't feel she could. I think she's too strong. She's shown
That is true.
She has shown, boy, to take the licks that she took.
Not just that.
Oh my God, from within. I mean, you know, she is a strong woman.
But Karen, forgive me. At least right now, I wouldn't have said this 2 years ago. But right now, arguably, she is for the UNC a benevolent dictator. Because she has managed to keep all the power, but she's not necessarily using it or misusing it, one could argue, at least for the most part. Whereas the PNM are showing, yes, we're very democratic. See how that worked out for us when everybody wants to follow their own agenda as opposed to work for the benefit of the party. It's very strange that this is how it's ended up, because usually it's in reverse.
It's not over till the fat lady sings. And the fat lady is not singing until the end of 5 years. You're being too preemptive. You're giving some. No, I'm going to tell you. Wait. You're giving some preemptive strikes.
As the speaker said, and I haven't commented on his comments, but as the speaker, democracy is not a now for now. It is an ongoing process.
There we go.
All right, folks. Thanks to Mr. Sam Fernando for calling in, and of course, thanks to Karen for joining me once again. This is just one of those topics. I think people are going to get fed up of me criticizing the opposition, which is why at times I did not criticize the UNC as much as I could have in the last 4 years, and now I'm going to probably have to start putting those things in place.
Because they're in the government. I took the position that I felt that I had to...
No, but I'm talking about the opposition now.
That what? You're criticizing?
Because I've been throwing a lot of criticisms at the PNM.
But you're hoping that they will...
I'm hoping for improvement, yes.
Exactly. It's constructive, not destructive.
Most politicians never view it that way.
Okay.
All right. With that said, thanks, Karen. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe. Remember your allegiance to this republic. Never forget, it's nice to be nice, even when we might disagree on how we think the country is going. Because having those conversations matters, and we will have those conversations when we see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power